So, dearly beloveds, welcome back. You are on the Sodium Haze channel where we analyse and decode the more egregious sins of the mainstream media from a socialist and anti-war perspective. So today we have this article by Peter Beaumont in yesterday's Observer. This opinion piece offers a faux historical treatment of the connection between the Western invasion of Iraq in 2003 and the current conflict in Ukraine. In my view, it contains many banal media tropes designed to hide the sins of Western imperialism and, of course, smear nominated opponents of the West. And here are 15 reasons in particular why I hate it. So Peter notes the jubilation in 2003 from some about the perceived ease with which the West invaded and conquered Iraq. He chooses not to place that in the context of estimates of civilian deaths from the conflict that go as high as 600,000, preferring instead to emphasize these subsequent consequences for Western foreign policy, which in my view is really shameful stuff from a journalist who is purporting to offer some historical context. So he references an arrest warrant issued by the ICC against Vladimir Putin with regards to allegations of child deportations from Ukraine to Russia as a sort of breezy note of the quote marks the crimes Putin is committing in Ukraine. Thus, the reader is invited to accept these allegations as proven literal facts. Now, as a 20-year veteran of war zones, Peter ought to know that accusing one side of war crimes in order to tub thump for support is a normal propaganda tactic, and that gathering independent evidence of war crimes during a war is notoriously difficult. Moreover, as I shall note in a future video, this particular story has major and easily identifiable question marks surrounding it if one chooses to look for them, which Peter clearly isn't minded to. Now, the article smears those like Sodium Haze who place the invasion of Ukraine in the context of Western violations of international law in Iraq, but also in Afghanistan, Somalia, Libya, Syria, and Israel, to name but a few. It has become standard practice in the corporate media to smear anyone who offers this very necessary context as a Putin apologist. This is an attempt to silence dissent and by implication demonize Putin. This kind of invective belongs down the pub or maybe on GB News, surely not in the Observer. Putin is explicitly referred to here as a bad actor for doing in Ukraine exactly what the West did in Iraq and Afghanistan and what Israel is continuing to do in Palestine with fulsome Western support. Peter chooses to frame the Iraq invasion as a window of moral opportunity for Putin to go to war, while ignoring the rather more obvious idea that when the West engages in not one but many violations of international law, that this just might have prompted Russia to give up on negotiations with the West concerning Ukraine because it feared the collective West could not be trusted. Peter also omits to mention the oft-broken Western promise not to expand the European Union and NATO eastwards towards Russia, or the Western involvement in toppling the democratically elected and pro-Russian government of Viktor Yanukovych in Ukraine, or the very salient truth that Ukraine has been acting as a de facto member of NATO for years, or that Ukraine had unilaterally reneged on the Minsk agreement, or that Zelensky was muttering darkly about Ukraine having its own nuclear weapons. The omission of all this context is deliberate, because if Peter included even half of it, then his thesis would be fatally undermined. Peter suggests that the Iraq War tarnished the moral authority of the West, without wondering where this self-awarded moral authority even comes from. He chooses not to ask why Britain or France or the United States have any claim to moral authority, given their long and bloody track records of colonialism and military aggression. It was Britain that looted India and painted much of the world map pink via military conquest and colonial plunder. It was the United States that brutalised Vietnam, Korea, Iraq, Afghanistan, and dropped nuclear weapons on civilian cities. Who gave the West this moral authority? I guess it's best not to ask, I suppose, but I have to say it's poor practice for a journalist, methinks. Now, Peter says that the West was tempted into another intervention in Libya. Many commentators have suggested that the West didn't need to resist temptation all that much, given that they had an opportunity to remove a leader in Gaddafi who was explicitly hostile to the West, who was threatening to trade oil in euros instead of dollars, and who was preventing Western multinational access to some very tasty looking oil fields. He also tastefully packages the illegal bombing of Libya as an intervention. The article carefully omits the context that the West's intervention has left Libya a shattered state. This has caused immense suffering, prompting a refugee crisis that has seen many men, women and children drowned in the Mediterranean, while the aforementioned holders of moral authority have tried to make rescuing those drowning refugees a criminal offence. Peter says that the Iraq War was sold to Bush by the neocons surrounding him in Washington as a way of bringing American-style democracy and stability to the Middle East. This is truly laughable. Peter confuses the narrative that was sold to us by people like him with the real plan of Bush and the neocons in Washington, which was to purposefully destabilize the Middle East in service of US geopolitical self-interest. The article says that nominated enemies of the West, like Putin, took the opportunity of the notion of Western hypocrisy as cover for their own imperialist ambitions. Western hypocrisy in these matters is not a notion, it is a fact. You cannot claim to act as the world's police force while simultaneously violating the very rules-based order you claim to be upholding. That is exactly what the West has done in Iraq, Libya, Syria and Afghanistan, and what it merely supports in Israel and Yemen. Not to mention the long form that the US has in toppling and seeking to topple democratically elected governments when their policies don't chime with US interests. See Venezuela and indeed the Ukraine for details. Peter references as an established fact that chemical weapons were used in Syria, where multiple investigations have been unable to provide any evidence that the excuse deployed by the UK to bomb Syria was true. This omission neatly absolves the West of its sins once again. The article conflates Russia, Syria, North Korea and Yemen as being all of a piece. To my mind, this is a weird form of racism, as it implies some vague, linked conspiracy, membership of which is defined merely by being a nominated enemy of the West. How Peter can invoke the suffering of Yemen, into which the West, via Saudi Arabia, has poured weapons and military expertise, is baffling. I have seen awful, shocking pictures and video footage of alleged Saudi Arabian war crimes in Yemen. And for this heinous article to breezily conflate the tragic and complex situation there with North Korea is, in my view, truly shameful. Peter muses as to whether it is worth returning to the lies that launched the Iraq War, but his narrative reason for doing so is to name Russia and China as the world's leading producers of disinformation. As this shoddy and wholly dishonest article, published as it is in what is supposed to be one of the flagship newspapers of liberal left journalism, ably demonstrates is that sophistry is alive and well in the West also. I would go further and suggest that the unprecedented propaganda bombardment from the Western mainstream media concerning Ukraine is at least a match for anything put out by Russia or China, and I suspect greatly exceeds it. Thank you very much, friends, for your attention. As always, we are very interested to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you like this video, click like. It would be a big help to us if you could subscribe to our channel and share this video. We bid you farewell and hope you can join us next time.